Hi, English 5320 class and Dr. Barrett. I have all this stuff laid out in front of me, and so I'm going to go through it as organized as I can, hoping that I cover all the bullet points for the assignment. So after much emailing back and forth between Dr. Barrett and myself, I have finally, I think, zoomed in and narrowed down exactly what I want to do. And so I don't know exactly why I'm so interested in the Cajun culture in southern Louisiana. I really love crawfish. I really don't know what draws me to it, but it's something that I don't know a lot about that I've always been interested in. And so I decided that I wanted to cover something over that. Well, the problem was I had so much information and so many aspects of it, I had to get it narrowed down. And so after narrowing it down, the tentative framework for my paper is going to be basically over the competing dialects and the history of the loss of Cajun French. So this has a lot to do with the dialect oppression that started in the early 1900s when basically Louisiana was purchased into the United States, and English became the dominant language taught in schools, and kids were shamed for speaking any type of dialect or any type of a mixed French. What's interesting about southern Louisiana is that there are so many different groups of people that all settled in that area, and what's really cool about it is now different parts of Louisiana, some people have a hard time communicating with people in other parts of the state simply because they speak, it's such a mix of so many different things. And I'm going to go into that and talk a little bit about it. But mainly I want to go into the dialect depression. Now, I am an English teacher and I am an education actual major at Tarleton. And so I want to go into more of the aspects of the schoolroom. And the solution or position of my paper is going to be more about bringing Cajun French, which isn't an actual language, it's more of a dialect, bring it back into schools, the classroom, at a younger age than a college level. Because in my research, I found that big universities like LSU and other big universities in the state, they actually offer Cajun French classes, but none of that is offered at a lower grade level. Which, let me get my notes here. That's actually called the critical age hypothesis. And so that is my position on the topic. And why should we do this? Why should it be done? And it's to help communication statewide and between family members. There's been a generational problem where grandkids have a problem communicating with their grandparents because their grandparents still want to speak more of the Cajun French dialect. And so also I've found a lot of sources, which I'm going to go into in just a second, but I found lots of sources that talk about when a language dies, so does the culture. And I think culture is something that's so important to stay. I hate it when I hear about like culture fading out or language fading out. I think that's unfortunate because that is those people's roots, a lot of it. And so that is my tentative position on all of that. I'm still working on how I'm going to put it all together. Now, as far as my sources go, I've got 13 right now, and I've got them sorted. I've got them sorted by basically culture facts, okay, teacher involvement in the classroom, age, things that hit on the critical age hypothesis in language, and then also just really good sources that talk about the history that's going to bring it all together and make it make sense here, because I've got to include some background information. So one of my sources, I'll start with this one. It's kind of like the lone source. It is an academic journal It's from the Journal of French Language Studies from Cambridge University. And it's called Language Death and Subject Expression, the declining dialect of Louisiana French. So it actually talks about dying of Cajun French. It also gives a lot of definitions of the terms that I need to know going forward with the paper. Personal, cultural, and political implications of language loss or change. This is another academic journal. And basically, it talks about the importance of teaching language and what happens when a language dies. I've got another, cultural diversity and its implications for second language writing. This talks a lot about contrastive rhetoric, the culture of the language, basically, of Southern Louisiana. It also goes into an analysis of teaching Spanish kids English, but again, all of that goes into, methods of teaching in the classroom. I found a newspaper article from a college campus, and I can't find the name of it right now, but it basically is a college student who wrote an article about foreign languages should be taught at a younger age, and so her position was it is easier for children to learn languages than adults, and it goes into how second languages are taught at the college level and how they should be taught at a younger level. Then I have I have 3 solid sources. These are all academic journals, and they talk about the critical age hypothesis and how young learners can pick up that second language or dialect. And in my case, it's dialect, but this is language. I'm going to relate the two basically as one. And it talks about why younger people have an easier time processing and understanding and learning another language. So that's going to back up and reinforce my position of what I'm trying to get through. I found a really interesting blog article, which I think I can prove that it is, since I'm giving my opinion, and this is something that's coming from an actual Louisianan, I think I can credit it as being credible. Does that make sense? I think that I can use enough of this opinion of this person to make it work in my paper. I hope so anyways. This basically discusses the Cajun classes that are at LSU. But again, it reinforces that, he wishes that it would get taught sooner in the state of Louisiana. I'm already at 8 minutes, so I'm going to try to hurry. And then I have 4. I have 4 sources as far as the history of what I'm discussing. I have an actual thesis that was written by a guy in Indiana, and it's funny because he can't really explain why he's interested in Cajun culture and all this, but his whole thesis was written over French immersion teachers' attitudes toward Louisiana varieties of French and the integration of such varieties in their classroom. And it says it's a quantitative and qualitative analysis. This thesis is so rich in information. I'm really excited that I found it. Then I have another historical journal article called Cajun is Dead, Long Live Cajun, Shifting from a Linguistic to a Cultural Community. And this gives a lot of history about the Cajun people, about how they self-identify. And so these particular articles really help me understand basically just the culture of the people and where it comes from. I've got 2 more. I've got Cajun French Language Maintenance and Shift. It was a study in 1970 that was basically given over the language shift and the decline of the Cajun French. And then my last 2 talk about the history, but it also talks about how the culture is dying to a certain extent with the dialect. Okay, and so I'm already at 10 minutes, and I'm sure I've bored y'all. I wanted to make sure that I was thorough enough. The reason my video is a little bit longer is because I've been doing so much research. I now have 13 sources instead of, I guess you said the minimum may have been like 5 articles, but mine was at 13, and so there was no way I could throw that in there without it going over. Anyways, so I'm so open to anybody's perspective on maybe how I should go about it or their advice. I'm really excited. This has been really interesting to study, and I'm really hoping that I can tie it all together and understand the LSA format, because I've been reading over it, and I've never done it before, and so that's totally new to me. And so hopefully I can put this all together accurately and make a really good paper.